can't see the future. I have no ability to look into events that haven't yet happened, like all humans. But as I watch Akash Deep coming into Ollie Pope, I know what is about to happen. In fact, let me take it a step further. I can see it. The score is 80 for 3, but I know it will be 80 for 4, and that Ollie Pope will be bowled. I don't tell anyone because that would be weird, but as Akash comes in, it's clear to me it's going to happen. The ball is pitched on a length just outside off. It darts back in towards the stumps, but also bounces. It is not a normal delivery that would bowl someone, but then it hits Pope's elbow and goes straight down onto the stumps. I tell everyone around me that I saw this coming, and no one even looks in my direction. I could see the future. It's a miracle, and still, no one cares. Then I think about it. Assuming Pope will be out soon when he's batting in the 4th innings is a pretty safe assumption. Thinking he might be bowled is perhaps just as likely. I didn't have a premonition. I've just watched a lot of cricket, and specifically, heaps of Ollie Pope. That alone can warp a brain. His career is a miracle, and I mean that almost literally. It's a miracle he's still here. His continued existence is almost supernatural. There has never been another batter like Ollie Pope. It's miraculous. The Parks is a cricket ground, and on the 28th of March in 2017, there was a first-class match played between Oxford University Cricket Club and Surrey. The county side had 8 international players in their lineup. Oxford had, well, students. It's an odd match, but coming in at number 6 in that game was Sam Curran, who would go on to be the 9th player in this Surrey team to represent England. At number 7, behind him, was Pope. He'd be the 10th. This team was clearly very strong, but he was still batting at number 7 while being dismissed by a Zimbabwean whose only notable achievement in top-level cricket was 100 in the Under-19 World Cup. And yet, 499 days later, Pope will be batting at number 4 for England against an Indian attack of Mohammad Shami, Ishant Sharma, Kuldeep Yadav and R. Ashwin. It was quite the leap in a short period of time. Oh, and that was his first time ever batting as high as 4 in first-class cricket, including a game in the previous month when he made his debut for the England Lions against India A at 5. If they were planning, or even thinking of him batting higher in that test team, surely Nick Gubbins or Dawid Malan could have moved. If England truly thought Pope was a special player and one for the future, when they played him in the test, surely they'd at least bat him at 5. But the absurdity of this lineup shows you that Ben Stokes wasn't there. It was at the peak of Josh Bartlett as a specialist batter, and then they had Wokes at number 7. So the only person who could have been moved to 4 was either Joe Root at number 3 or Johnny Bairstow at 5, who was also keeping. To completely misquote Rob Gordon from High Fidelity, it would be nice to think that since Pope was thrown in at 4, times have changed. England have become more sophisticated, less cruel, and instincts more developed. But there seems to be an element of that first test in everything that has happened to Pope since. After his early successes at 5 and 6, Pope's form dipped, so they binned him, only to bring him back as a number 3. You can't handle the easy spot. What about the toughest? Just when he was getting used to that, they decided to make him the keeper in New Zealand at number 6, despite every other living mammal in England being able to take the gloves as well. In the middle of all that, while he was still struggling for form, they also made him vice captain. That meant that when his leader was injured, which was Ben Stokes, so it was always going to happen, he had to take over. So he was backup captain, understudy keeper, and an experimental number 3, and that's all under Bazball. To an outsider, Pope might seem like a test number 5 or 6, who could perhaps move up the order later in his career. To England, he's not a player, he's a plug. Raymond Reifer was a 31-year-old all-rounder who was averaging 28 in first-class cricket when the West Indies picked him to bat at number 3. 7 times they looked at their team and they said, for this match, Reifer will come in at first drop. The West Indies have used George Headley, Garfield Sobers, Rowan Canai, Clyde Walcott, Viv Richards and Brian Lara at number 3. All of them are in my greatest 50 test batters ever. Raymond Reifer is not. Crick Viz's Ben Jones once suggested that Chris Wokes could go in at 3 for England. His theory was that England couldn't find a top order player, and at least they knew he could bat. He was averaging around 30 at that point. It was revolutionary, and apparently ahead of its time, as teams are now basically going with this option. There are 4 kinds of first drops in tests now. Traditional, those who bat at number 3 for their, first class teams. Backup openers, often the team's 3rd best new ball batter. False 3s, Jacob Bethel, Raymond Reifer, and VM Mulder are there because someone has to go out when a wicket is lost. And the middle order promotion, Cameron Threen and his kind. Ollie Pope is one of the batters who's clearly good enough to be in his nation's top 6, but the issue is he's probably a number 5. But England have had Bairstow, Stokes and Brook available to them. They have number 5s coming out their arse, so much so that some of them are at 6 as well. So Pope ended up at 3, and he has more than 2,000 runs there. Not bad for a makeshift player they nearly binned recently. England is keen to pump him up. Ben Stokes even pointed out that he averaged at more than 40 at number 3. And he does. Also at a strike rate of 80. That is a record that anyone would happily steal in this era. He also has the 9th most runs for England already in this spot. Now, some of that is because England don't have a great lineup of people at first drop, and his average is lower than most. But it's worth looking at his match factor as well. The first 4 players on this list are legit England grades. The first 2 are top 20 batters of all time candidates. And we toyed with Gower in our list of 50 for the art of batting. And Ted Dexter was a very high quality player. The 5th one is Jonathan Trott, who was a big force for a small period of time. Root has really only done it when everything else is shit for England. But the real comp here is Nasser Hussain. England's former captain never met a ball he didn't want to squeak down to 3rd. Hussain batted like a beaver trying to rebuild a dam on the edge of Niagara Falls. He would never win, but that never seemed to bother him as he would fight so hard for every ball. Ollie Pope is not like Nasser Hussain. He's far prettier aesthetically, and he looks like he could play most of the shots. And even when he's struggling at the crease, he doesn't feel like he's the last guy in the foxhole who is out of bullets like Hussain was. So in our minds, Nasser was a batter who made good through sheer will, and Pope is an ethereal waif, pissing up his talent against the wall. Yet, not only is Pope a makeshift number 3, he's doing it with one of the lowest scoring players in Test cricket ahead of him. Zach Crawley doesn't make many runs, and he also does that very quickly, meaning that Pope is often at the crease for the first 7 overs, and in those, he struggles. But if England had a stronger opening duo, or Crawley was even a Rory Burns or Dom Sibley style player, then Pope would be a better number 3. It's hard to be a false 3. It's even tougher when you're behind an opener with one of the worst records ever in tests. On the days when Crawley is out playing a loose drive, it really is more Ollie Hope than Ollie Pope. You can argue the average or effectiveness, but Pope has made the most runs at number 3 in the last few years. And it's been so tough that the 3rd highest player, Marnus Labuschagne, has been dropped. In an era when no one's doing well at first drop, he's hanging in. He might be a false 3, but these are real runs. Marvin Adipatu had one of the worst career starts in the history of our sport. He played a test in 1990 for Sri Lanka and made a pair. He was dropped for 2 years, then he came back in 1992 and he made 1 run. His 3rd test was 1994 and he made another pair. 1 run in 6 innings. Unsurprisingly, his 4th match was in 1997. This time, he stuck around. However, after 9 matches, his top score was 29 and he was averaging 10. From there, he had a respectable career, playing until 2007 and finishing with an average just under 40. At one stage, he got it above that, which, considering he forfeited his early career, was one of the best career comebacks ever. He was an Asian opener who averaged more in England, Australia, New Zealand, and the West Indies than he did at home. This was one of the weirdest careers ever. And one way to tell this was through his median score of 16.5. Median is not something we talk about a lot in cricket. It's average's forgotten little cousin. It is obviously not as illustrative as average, but it does tell you things. For batters, the median is a score that lies exactly in the middle of all their innings when sorted from highest to lowest. So half the scores are higher and half are lower. 16.5 is very low. The average median score for a top 6 batter is 26.2. Despite averaging nearly 40, Marvin either made runs by the sackful or none. He was rarely a player who chipped in. And we mentioned this because Pope has the exact same median score of 16.5. Zimbabwean opener Grant Flower has the lowest on record of 15. And so Pope is not that far off him. But Flower was a slow-moving opener who fought for every single ball, but was a terrible starter and more than once batted for 100 balls without crossing 20. His magnum opus was when Zimbabwe were chasing 99 against the West Indies, and he anchored, and we mean that as literally as you can, the chase. Flower was the 5th batter out in the 38th over, and he made 26 from 126 balls. He flattened the stumps with his bat when he was out. No one else passed 6. Zimbabwe, unsurprisingly, lost that match. Players with low medians are weird. For Pope, the player worth looking at is Dennis Amos, an English opener from the 60s and 70s. He ended with a very good average, but his record was a mess. Against Australia, he averaged 15. Against everyone else, it was practically 50. And one reason he struggled against the Aussies was their fast bowlers, though confusingly, he made a huge score against an even faster West Indies attack. So he ended up being the first player to try a modern cricket helmet. But he also managed to score as many hundreds as 50, 11 centuries in total, and 8 of them were more than 150. He batted 88 times in tests, and 42 of them were single or triple figure scores. When he was in, Amos was an obviously gifted player, albeit with some massive weaknesses like a complete inability to start an innings. But Amos, Adipatu and Flower were slow players, at least early on. Pope is Bazball, and so here's the worst deliveries per dismissal median on record. This means you are more likely to see Pope fall quickly than any batter in the history of our sport. In fact, if you look beyond the top 6 and just look at players with 3,000 runs, the only players who are quicker to be taken out are tailenders like Shane Warne and Stuart Broad. According to Median, the average Ollie Pope innings is a camera flash. Steve Smith doesn't sleep during tests, and you can track his average by innings and see him getting more exhausted. Everyone thinks it's odd. Well, Ollie Pope told TalkSport recently that he also can't sleep during tests, and it makes sense looking at his record. Ollie Pope is like a declining stock. With each innings he gives you less. Tests are long. Not sleeping for 3 or 4 days is going to affect your performance. But there are also technical reasons some batters struggle later in the game. Smith plays across the line, meaning when the ball is not bouncing as consistently, he's more likely to find trouble. On an extremely related note, Ollie Pope gets bowled a lot by pace. His stumps being splattered is a meme and a t-shirt. No one wants their first drop castled on, except that in classic Pope style, it tells you absolutely everything and kind of nothing. Because the player in Test cricket who has been bowled the most by pace is Wally Hammond, England's greatest number 3. In fact, many of these players are some of the best ever. So Pope gets bowled a lot, and perhaps that is bad in the final innings. But let's check this pattern of declining returns in county cricket. When Pope plays for Surrey, he has no issue at all. Now, final innings in first class cricket is different, as there is 1 fewer day. In county cricket, he's got a normal pattern. Pick him for England, and he gets freaky. And it's also not just the 4th innings. If you look at Pope, he has one of the worst records in the 3rd as well. If Test cricket was a 1 innings game, he'd be one of the world's best players. But he cannot get in for the 2nd knock. And it's not like all pitches deteriorate, or that they are so long that he's not slept for 4 nights either. So this is just totally stupid.
In England's 2nd innings of the match, the median balls Pope will face is 19. That is what you expect from a number 9. And just for you maths fans, that's just more than 3 overs.
But Pope isn't just bad in the final innings. He is historically bad. In an era when his team loves the last innings and pitchers seem to stay whole for longer than ever before, Pope is more spirit than flesh. At the end, he's a batter by name only, a long-forgotten whisper. England couldn't make runs. They were trying blockers at the top in the hope that they could at least delay the entry of their middle order. And even that had limited effect. And then in 2020, a fresh-faced batter comes in and makes runs, while also having a huge county record to back it up. England was almost as excited for Pope as they had been for Root a decade before. At the Wanderers in 2020, I'm given an assignment by the TalkSport producer John Norman after Pope's breezy first innings 50. Can you analyse Ollie Pope for any weakness? It was like being asked to vomit on Bambi. English fans did not want to hear anything negative about their great white Pope. And commentating with me is his Surrey teammate, Gareth Batty, who would go on to be his coach, and also Surrey legend Mark Butcher. To keep it light, I went through all of the fun bits to show how good he had been against Seam. And of course, his famous record at the Oval, where even now he averages doubles there than he does in all the rest of county cricket combined. So these Surrey boys had seen him make a lot of runs, and now he'd done the same for England, and they were very high on him. At that point, only 9 players had ever made 2,000 runs in county cricket and averaged more than 60. That list included Crowe, Lara, and Sangakkara. No first names required. It was quite the start to a career from Pope. Since then, he's regressed slightly. He only averages 58 in the county game now. So making runs in English domestic cricket has not been easy for a long time. And for young local players, it's been almost impossible. But Pope has been incredible. And you can see that late career Mark Butcher was pretty handy as well. So Butch knows batting and Pope. And here I was telling him 2 things. That the young Surrey gun basically couldn't score when the ball was on a length outside off stump, which is never a good sign. And that his strike rotation against spin was terrible. Mark Butcher is a good friend of mine, but he was having a little bit of fun on radio when he suggested that this was the biggest load of crap he had ever heard.
And here's how I got told off by Batty.
Does that make sense, Maddie?
No.
Absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense being spoken.
Excuse me, sirs. Excuse me, sirs.
No, you've had your chance.
He made
Enough.
8 runs
Enough.
off 28 balls from left-arm finger spin.
Well,
Stats
okay.
don't care about your opinion, Butch.
Joe Denley made, 6 runs off 62?
Ollie
No,
Pope's a better player.
nonsense. Go away. We've had enough.
But from the limited data I had on Pope, there was a pattern in his play. He was scoring at 1.3 runs and over when the ball was delivered on a length outside off. That is alarmingly low. And that means that teams can really keep the pressure on him as long as they want. My bigger concern was against spin. In first-class cricket, he could not rotate at all. And that is against mostly English spinners on wickets that don't suit him. How is he going to go when he went to Asia? Well, after that, in 15 matches across India and Pakistan, he averages 27. The Indian wickets have been tough. And the back end of Pakistan's last tour was as well. But he still has the same basic issue of not being able to rotate the strike that showed up in county cricket all those years ago. But this is Pope, so of course it's stranger than what you think. His problem in Asia is not just spin, it's also pace. And that might be because of his issue with being bowled, because Asian wickets keep lower. And so he's been bowled in LBW quite a few times by seamers there. Against spin, he makes it fun again this time by being worse against a ball that turns into him rather than moving away. If you've ever seen Pope try to play R. Ashwin, you'll have seen someone trying to solve a Sudoku while base jumping. He's about as bad a back foot player against off spin as any right-hander ever. He gets trapped in front as if every ball a little bit shorter is an anxiety-laden cluster bomb, whereas he has no issues against left-armers on the back foot. But on the front, he starts to get shakier. And this is where he's great against offies. But the kicker is, he runs down the wicket like someone trying to hail a bus that has already left. He might be one of the worst players to use his feet to spin in the modern game. Perhaps early in his life he was successful, but tweakers and tests are better and quicker. But he should stay in his crease, at all costs. Down the wicket only lies pain. Pope is also not only poor at rotating the strike in terms of speed, but also staying in. Your high average should be the shots that are low risk, but his are the attacking ones. Pope can hit spin, he cannot milk it. Now clearly things change a lot when McCullum comes in. Before, he was often stuck and then played the odd boundary shot. After, he became a reverse sweeping zealot, often running down the pitch. And now he is somewhere in between. Spin is still not his thing and probably will never be. But Pope in county cricket might make more sense now, because it's a competition with spinners and even less wickets that suit them, where fast, medium and below seamers try to take your outside edge for pack slip cordons, and there are no fifth days. If Pope bats in the 4th innings, the wicket should still be holding up. There aren't many quick bowlers to blast through him, and if strike rotation is his issue, then the spinners are more likely to deliver a loose ball for his attacking shots. After 10 tests, Ollie Pope averaged 43. He played well in South Africa and made runs against the West Indies. By his 24th, he was going at 27. He'd gone from prodigy to liability. Maybe Pope can never live up to the early hype through no fault of his own. It's just that he isn't perfectly built for tests. There are good bits, but his game's like a kid's doll made up of all the leftover parts forgotten under the bed. Pope has always been an uneasy Bazballer, like he was given a script he didn't quite agree with, but thought he could ad-lib his way through. For all the fireworks, champagne and cigars, his average was 28 when Brendan McCullum changed Test cricket, and since then, it's been 38. That's a massive leap. However, if you take out the huge scores against non-WTC teams, it's 34. Again, it is still better, but he hasn't really transformed Pope into something unrecognisable from before. Just a slightly more devil-may-care version. In the last WTC cycle, Pope made 1,000 runs, but it was at an average of 31. And his strike rate was good, but not revolutionary. Lots of his pre-Baz tests were from when he was young, when players usually take some time to start making runs. So Pope was due to make more in the back end of his 20s than at the beginning. More importantly, he has not yet reached his peak. He's currently 27. So maybe everything we've seen so far in his career is just bum fluff on the way to something more. If we factor in his age, we'd assume that he'd start to make around 7% more runs in the period of Bazball than he had in his early 20s of, let's call it, normal cricket. So he's certainly outperformed the expected age curve. But there is one thing Pope has to get used to because of modern cricket and the way his team plays. Only Aiden Markram has ever played in a smaller percentage of draws. Almost all of Pope's matches are results. There is nowhere to hide. Almost every knock is important or needed, or on a pitch where bowlers can get wickets. And so how do Pope and England combat this? By whacking, moving Pope's strike rate from 50 to 70. And because of that, Pope has one of the lowest control percentages in cricket, but not in his team, because there are so many other players from England here. This is their plan. Disrupt, cause chaos, make their players think they're 10 feet tall. Because Bazball has weaponized confidence. Pope's career exists largely because he believes their hype about him. So how has all of that affected Pope? Before, he would make 28 runs from 56 deliveries per innings. Now, it's 34 from 49. Because only in Bazball could someone hit a 6 from -8 deliveries. How is Ollie Pope doing this? His batting is grotesque. He turns to play a reverse sweep, but maybe he forgets about that plan and he starts to walk down the wicket instead. A charge and reverse. Bazball in one shot. Pope rarely reversed before, and now he's downing pints of Bazball Kool-Aid, trying shots he doesn't even believe in. He's not very good at the reverse, as Rohit hints loudly, and is almost out several times. Also, despite playing a lot of them, he doesn't score that much. But he's up against Akshar Patel at one end and R. Ashwin at the other. He can't play either traditionally, and so he's trying to disrupt. This means that at one point, he ends up with his hands and knees on the pitch after trying to defend. From 9 innings on Indian soil, he has barely more than 150 runs. In this knock, he puts up 196. England only made 246 as a team in the first innings. And the big question from the Indian side is simply, how is Ollie Pope doing this? India have played Bazball once, and they've been preparing for months. They know that the chances of England being able to handle their bowlers on their wickets is very low. They just need to execute well and wait for wickets. And of all the batters, they worry the least about Pope. Not through arrogance, just experience. They have several plans for him. They know he struggles with spin, and even more so in Asia. So with Jasprit Bumrah in the game, that feels inevitable. And most days they would be right. Today, that doesn't happen. Ashwin looks flustered. Jadeja can't work out what to bowl. Akshar is toothless. And India get ragged in the field. At the breaks, as a team, they keep asking the same question. How is Ollie Pope doing this? 62% of his total for the series comes in that knock. India lose the test, and Pope doesn't make another run on that tour as 6 players score more than he does. This is not a normal batter. His record looks like it was put together by a bunch of toddlers. There is nothing standard or straightforward about Ollie Pope. He is a miraculous bastard child of modern batting. Maybe this weirdness is our future. A weak-chinned chimera patrolling cricket's run-barren landscape, feasting on scraps. How is Ollie Pope doing this? Maybe we'll never know.